This is the Code to Cash podcast.
And you will know really well that one of the biggest value relation levers is pricing. If you can incrementally add some pricing or align yourself pricing so your customers grow faster with you, the impact is straight to the bottom line, right? And I think a lot of the hesitation comes with the fact pricing is one of those really emotional topics as well for a lot of people. It doesn't really, I don't really feel it has a very natural place in an organization either, in the sense, we've had, I've worked for organizations, sitting under marketing, sitting under the CRO, you're sitting under the COO, for example. And all of those, if you think about their sort of vantage point, it's very different, right? Marketing is very different in terms of it's more about brand awareness, hitting your ICP, etc. You've got the CRO, who's very much around sales and sales efficacy and sales performance. Operational is, does it all work, flawlessly? Do we end up giving a bill to a customer which represents their, what they've subscribed to or what they've used? And I always find with the CEO, when you talk to the CEOs about the opportunity ahead, where you can start restating some of the fundamentals and the financials and the impact, everybody gets excited about more revenue and more EBIT, right? It's an obvious thing. But I think the trepidation typically comes to, we have hundreds or thousands of customers. How do we now start thinking about saying to these guys, we're going to change this model that we've been working with you for several years, right? The product evolution has probably been incredible. And the pricing evolution, I've been in organizations where the pricing, for example, when's the last time you did pricing? And it's like 17 years ago. It's like, wow. And think about that, right? 17 years ago, the landscape, in terms of your competitors, what your customers are looking for, the pricing goals that we've got access to today, the incredible technology that we've got access to today, where we can actually really start A/B testing and really start understanding, and we align that value. It's in a completely different, atmosphere now, right? But that's the reality, right? And you think about a lot of the pricing models, even where companies are tweaking it. You think about a lot of the stats that you get from the likes of OpenView, Bessemer, for example, and specifically SaaS. Over 50% of companies are still adopting something akin to user-based pricing. Right? I would always call user-based pricing. It does work in certain scenarios, but it's the laziest version of pricing from my perspective, right? And then you go in and then explain why that is, right? You think about Salesforce. You've got 10 Salesforce licenses to 10 people, but what if one of them is delivering $100 million of incremental revenue through his action, right? And the others are delivering $1 million. You're still charging the same person every single dollar, right? It's $100 per user. For me, how do you align it to the value that you're actually delivering and link it to that business outcome? And for me, it really impacts also the sales cycle. When you start thinking about sales stages and you're starting to think about value exchange, value communication, having the right pricing model really, really works. And, so I find it quite fascinating that, when you think about the trepidation that exists today, they think about it purely from a change perspective. And I think change, as you can imagine, makes people nervous. There is a little bit of fear. But again, this is where I think the framework comes into account, right? You bring the right expertise into the organization or from external. You mentioned Simon Kucher, for example. How do you bring that expertise in where it's not about this big bang change? Just like a product, you wouldn't say to you wouldn't turn a product off and replace it with a new product in the same cycle, right? You do it over time. I find pricing, very much like a product. Iterate it over time, implement it over time, but the end goal should be very much built around: does it add more value to your customers? Does it enable them to grow and align with the value that they're hopefully receiving and realizing? And I don't think any of the fundamentals are changed. So I always try to instill that methodology and mentality. Think of it like a product, guys. Your product will never stand still. And if your product stands still, you'll probably be out of business.